with Sergey. Sergey is the one with whom we work with the organization called ERIC, which is the one that's buying the drones, bringing the drones here to the front lines. And currently, we are at very close to Russia. We're about 25 kilometers, which works out to be, I guess, about 15 miles from Russia's border right now. In addition to that, we have a lot that's going on here in these past few days. As you know, there's a lot of pressure right now on Ukraine to begin these peace talks. These peace talks undoubtedly will not be favorable to Ukraine for the way that they're currently being conducted. And so there's a lot of concern as to what's going to happen next. Everybody's worried about that. But at the same time, here at the front, it keep going. People have to continue fighting. They have to continue surviving. Here in the city, a lot of it has been affected by the war. There's a lot of destruction in the downtown of the city. Talking to people here, they've also suffered, like a lot of the country, a lack of electricity, a lack of heating at different times. There's a lot of day-to-day suffering you see. And as I've mentioned before, here in Ukraine, one of the things that has surprised me over time is when and I didn't notice this actually until last summer, somebody was visiting from a different country, from Poland, actually, and he said, "Did you notice here in Kiev, we were in Kiev, all the guys that have amputations?" And the thing is, I had not really noticed it. But the fact is, it had been increasing so much over time. It's like a frog in hot water. You don't notice the environment that you're in. And once he called my attention to it, I was like, "You're right. That is actually sort of stunning how much that's increased over time and how common it is, how much you do see that." But here in the front lines, talking to soldiers, which we just came from, there was a lot that they shared with us, a lot that was very interesting about what's going on. They're very optimistic about the future. They're certainly not saying we're desperate for a deal. We'll take anything we can get. We hope this war ends. They all want the war to end, quite obviously, but they said it has to be for just peace. They've lost many thousands of soldiers fighting for Ukraine's freedom, and they don't want to see it just forsaken due to a cheap deal that really won't hold together. But overall, there's a lot of optimism here, I'd say, looking forward to the future of what's going to happen and how it's going to be able to assure Ukraine's victory and Ukraine's ability to secure its sovereignty. But I'll let Sergey say a couple of words.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you, Jason, for hosting this amazing live video or amazing channel. You guys have raised incredible, tremendous support for Ukraine. We have calculated today how much money has been raised through your channel, and I think it's over $565,000. It's like more than $500,000 went for the support of the brave Ukrainian fighters, ensuring them that they come back live to their families and that they may continue to defend their families. We have met today already in Kharkiv with the 225th Assault Regiment, which we support, Jason me, since summer last year. Summer last year, it was 225 who brought Jason me to Russian Suja, which was held by the Ukrainian army
In Kursk.
and in Kursk region. Like we went there within the first week of the Ukrainian incursion in Russia. With military Humvee, and we spoke back then to the Russian civilians who were there and asked them how they feel about this Ukrainian move and what do they think about Vladimir Putin and everything. And it looks like it was like eternity in the past, and it was just like 14 months. You see, like we are acting here a bit improvising, dealing in a hotel room with all this equipment. And now these 225 regiment has fought back the Russians who tried to invade in Sumy region in northeast of Ukraine, and now they're fighting back the Russians in Kharkiv region. And this is one of the best Ukrainian regiments. They themselves call themselves a firefighter brigade or an emergency response brigade because they got sent to the regions where Russians are especially dangerous, and they fight back. And these soldiers, they are extremely happy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will hold it. I hope the sound will be good. Yeah. These soldiers are extremely happy to see that you support them with your money and that you spend your time thinking about them from another continent, from across the world. I've seen already Australia is here, Brisbane, to the United States, Canada, other nations, and these soldiers who stick in the trenches in the cold, and it's pretty cold now in Ukraine. I can tell you, like it's not that snow, freezing cold, but it's nasty. It's wet, it's windy, it's dark, and the Russian drones fly over your head, and you don't want to see a Russian drone buzzing over your head. It's maybe the last thing you hear in your life. And these soldiers who fight for their freedom, they are extremely happy to know that thousands and thousands of people, and we have calculated, I think 15,000 people have donated up to date, that you all support them. And that is what give them energy. And we also brought, because I'm a German citizen, and in Germany today, we have what we call Erste Advent, or the first Sunday of pre-Christmas time, and we start to expect the Christmas. And I brought them German Christmas sweets, marzipan, candies, and that is what we do every Christmas. And we have done it last year for Christmas, and we have even celebrated Christmas in Suja, in Russian Kursk Oblast, back then held by the Ukrainian army, and singing Christmas songs together with the Ukrainian soldiers. And now today we start with Jason, with you community. We start a new Christmas campaign 2025, and we promise to deliver Ukrainian soldiers until Christmas with several packages of winter Christmas support, with what they need to survive this harsh winter, when many Western countries try to push on them something which Ukrainian soldiers see even worse than death itself: occupation, terror, captivity, torture, kidnapping, and Russification. And that is what they want to prevent with all powers they have. And that is what you guys help them to do, to fight back and to survive and stay in free Ukraine. Oh, thank you all. And thank you, Jason.
Sure. So, anyways, for those of you just coming in, we're here in Kharkiv, Ukraine, and right now there's not only air-related alert, but something that we don't have in Kiev, which is there is also, I'm trying to make it bigger. There's also the urban fighting alert and artillery alert for the city. So we don't have that in Kiev, fortunately, but it is here right now. And we just, right as we were starting this, right as this was going live, the air raid signals went off. Now, in the city itself, when you walk around, you'll see that there is, as I said, a substantial amount of destruction. The city is not totally destroyed or anything like that. There's still lots of buildings, but it's definitely been affected by the war. It's affected commerce. It's affected people's lives. As you know, Ukraine has faced a huge number of people who left when the war began, especially those in the eastern part of the country, for obvious reasons, left at higher rates. And that's something that affects the economy as a whole. As a whole, the people, though, that are here, you do notice less people in the streets. I'll say that first, is you physically just notice there are less people walking around than there used to be. That being said, the people that are here in the city that we've spoken with, we were here just when we were here, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
We were here 3 weeks ago delivering other drones to these soldiers, and now we're delivering yet more. Now, what we see, though, is that going forward, there is a lot of concern about what's going to happen next with the United States, because the U.S. is obviously the actor here that has the most ability to influence what will happen. And that's just a fact. And I mean that in a very nonpartisan way. It's quite obvious that the U.S. plays a very serious role in what's going on for Ukraine's future. It'll be determinant to what happens to Ukraine. And the soldiers here, as I expressed, have said, we are fighting for freedom. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for freedom. And that we would hope that the United States would support us in that and not walk away from us in this critical moment in our history. So there is obviously all eyes on what's going on right now in the United States, what's going on right now in Miami with the talks there, what's going to happen next with the delegation that's going to Moscow to meet with Putin. All of this is of great concern to everybody. Now, looking ahead, I think that there's a very good chance that we will see Russia start to pick up the attacks that are occurring here. I've expressed to you before that I am quite certain that Russia has no interest in ending this war. We have to understand that Russia as a country is one that is not like a normal country. It really is like a mafia. And I know a lot of people say that, but when you really look at it in its essence, it does share a lot of commonalities. I mean, countries are supposed to operate in the interest of their people, the population, or in the interest of the state as a whole. But in this case, it doesn't. It operates in the interest of the leadership to make more money, to increase their wealth, to increase their ability to continue ruling the country so they can continue robbing the country. And that's why this war, though it would seem sort of counterintuitive because it is destroying Russia, it's something that the Russian economy cannot endure. Why would they continue doing it? Because they are trying to do as much as they can to maximize profit. And if that means that they will destroy the country in the meantime, they're willing to do that. They don't care at all. And that's why I think that they're intentionally going out of their way to sabotage the talks. Now, these talks, as I said earlier, are something that I think are going to be not successful. But Russia itself doesn't want them to be successful. Dimitrov last week was leaking to Politico what had gone on. That he said, he was getting over information about what was happening in the talks. We saw just was it 3 days ago, 4 days ago, Ushakov's conversation with Dimitrov, the Russian negotiator. How that phone call got out? Well, obviously the Russians released it. It wasn't the Americans. But who in Russia would release that? Well, Ushakov's reaction initially was that he was very surprised it got leaked. But this response of Dimitrov, it was it looked almost poised, fake response of being shocked and offended by it. It's pretty clear that he was the one that released it. But why is he going to Washington, D.C.? What does that mean? Why is it that Dimitrov, a guy who most Americans probably didn't know who he was 6 months ago, why is he going instead of, say, a Russian ambassador, instead of Sergei Lavrov? Well, he is very close to Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin is doing more these days to consolidate power with his friends and family and those closely associated with him. As you know, Dimitrov's wife is the very close friend of Vladimir Putin's daughter. And because of that, he's considered to be almost part of the family. And so he's trusted. So when he goes to DC or he goes to negotiate, he's looking out for Vladimir Putin's personal interest. That is his objective. It is not the Russian state's interest. It's how to assure what is good for Putin. Now, that's sort of an interesting paradigm because the United States, I think many people in our leadership have this perception that Russia wants to end a war. This was something that's some sort of a misunderstanding that will just be smoothed over by these talks, but it's simply not like that. The reality is quite a bit different. The reality is that today, Russians are suffering. The country is getting poor. They are not doing better, but their senior leadership is making a lot more money. There are a lot of people making millions and millions of dollars from this. Look at the case of Prigozhin. You remember the Wagner Group? That group, according to Putin, after the Wagner Group revolted, have been paid over $1 billion by the Russian government. So if you're a Prigozhin and you're in charge of this mercenary group, that was a great business. It was really good. His problem, though, was a little bit different. He was upset that they were doing this stuff in Ukraine, where it's more profitable for their private military companies to be in, let's say, northern Africa, where they are actively right now, in like places like Burkina Faso, because they're this mining. There's things that the state they can capture and allow them to make more money. That's what was of interest to him. It's all about business. It's all about who can make money from this. And unfortunately, today, it seems that the Russians are quite intent on trying to find people in the United States in our leadership who might also share that sort of worldview that it's about personal profit ahead of the state's interest. And they are seeking that out. And we can see that from what they've leaked and what they've said. But going ahead, there's going to be a lot going on in the next few days, next few weeks. That's going to be very important for Ukraine's future. I think most people understand that if there is a peace, it is not going to last. It's going to be a peace in name only. It's going to be a peace in order to satisfy foreigners, namely the United States. But the fact is, it's not going to change anything. Vladimir Putin, his objectives have not changed. According to CIA reporting for the past 3 years, his objectives have remained exactly the same since day one. They have not changed at all. So why would we assume that now they're going to change? What has he said that he's really interested? I mean, you've heard the conversation with Dimitrov and Ushakov. They said, what points should we send to Washington? Well, let's just send them the same ones that we sent last time, the really hardline ones. They didn't even discuss it. But that's part of the Russian strategy. Actually, Sergei and I had many hours in the car today together, so we discussed this at length, is that one of the things that I think is fascinating is that Russia uses all these different organizations, let's say the United Nations or diplomatic relations, bilateral relations with the U.S., they don't use it for the intended purpose. They make a mockery of it through the way that they abuse it. So they might send over diplomatic notes to the United States expressing interest. The Americans will spend hours and hours talking about this, wondering about this, trying to craft a response. But the Russians just came up with something to distract the Americans, something to make the Americans feel like they're very engaged, but they don't care. And actually, Sergei was telling me a story about that earlier today. What were you saying about the UK with the one?
Yeah, it is actually it's a long time tradition. It's a long time tradition of back then Soviet diplomacy, now Russian diplomacy. There is a part of in the memoirs of one of the first Soviet ministers of foreign affairs. Back then, it was called People's Commissariat for the Foreign Affairs, and he describes how in early 20s he or his like friends came into the office in Moscow on Friday evening and said, "Folks, let's create some job for the capitalists." And then they took like a beer, they sat around the table, and they wrote a very harsh, brutal, absolutely unpolite and meaningless, like without any substance, diplomatic note, and sent it to London. And then they laughed and went to the bar. Because they knew that the British diplomacy, the whole British diplomacy, will spend a weekend trying to decipher what is behind this insult. What do the Russians really want to achieve? Why are they so angry? How they can counter it? And after all, the Brits will spend hours and hours of working time. They will have bad mood. Maybe someone will have anger with his boss, will be dismissed or fired. Someone's prognosis will be counted as not fulfilled. And so a damage is done with very low means. And that is what Russian diplomacy is doing perfectly until now. They just distort our processes. They disturb them, they distort them, they damage them, they soar uncertainty and fear. And we spent like hours and hours in our TV shows, in our scientific roundtables. What stays behind that and that saying of Lavrov? How we should decipher him? What does it mean? It means nothing. Russia has demonstrated that they see diplomacy as a tool of war, as a tool of deception. It's not seen as a tool of creating some sort of understanding, mutual understanding, or lowering the tensions in the world. No, quite the opposite. They see diplomacy as the way to damage the opponent. And that's how it should be seen. It's not negotiation, it's psyops. Russia in itself as a huge psyop. They have managed to convince the world that they are mighty, that they are special. That's what Jason told today. As we spent today like 7 hours in a car driving into, when you drive through Ukrainian landscapes in late November, you have a lot of things to discuss. And Jason said it is about they have convinced us that they're special, but they're not. That's why they get treated specially, but they're not. Imagine if Germany or Poland or Italy or France would have behaved as Russia is behaving. Would they get like that special attention? No, they would be punished, but not with Russia. And that is exactly the problem. Russia pretends to be big, Russia pretends to be strong, Russia pretends to be special, but they're not. And what they fear mostly is when we tell them, stop, we'll not play these games. You'll be hit you'll be punched into your face, you'll get bloody nose. And that's what, for example, the Turks have done with two Russian jets being shot down. And that's what Ukraine is doing, like since 4 years, as Ukraine is saying, no, we'll not capitulate, and he will get a pretty bloody nose, and he will pay. You maybe we get like Pokrovsk, maybe another town, but he will pay with thousands and thousands of deaths of your soldiers, and he will never be able to defeat us.
That's the case. I guess we'll take some.
Yeah, there was like I pretty much like one of the questions which was there or which was a commentary. Oh, I muted it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So while it was muted, Jason said that he's fighting against the IT and trying to understand how to see the questions. And while he's doing that, I have realized there was like one, not a question, but a commentary maybe, if it's time for us to go to shelter. If people who are in Kharkiv, where we are now, would have hidden in a shelter every time when air alert is sounding, you would spend like 90% of your time in a shelter. There were air alerts in Kharkiv which lasted without any pause for 3 or 4 days in a row, or some days when you have like only 1 hour without air alert. The city is 15 miles from the Russian border. The city is absolutely open for missiles, artillery shelling, and drones. And if you think about a drone, like an FPV drone, It can fly with a fiber optic for 25, 35 kilometers. That means that a Russian pilot can stay on the Russian territory and launch a fiber optic drone to the city of Kharkiv, and the drone will reach Kharkiv. When we were driving through Kharkiv 3 weeks ago with Jason together, we have taken like the northern route, northern highway around of Kharkiv, and we were just like 12 kilometers from or 8 miles from Russian border. Like I was speeding like crazy, like 160 km/h. How much? It's 120 miles. 120 miles, like on a 50 miles or 45 miles speed limit, because I don't care about tickets. I just don't want the Russian drone being too fast to hit our car. And we had like a pretty large car. We had a delivery bus because we were delivering dozens and dozens of boxes with drones. And the Russians know that these buses are a very sweet target, because normally they either bring goods, or people who drive them normally bring goods. And I was speeding like this 100 miles an hour, because I just didn't want to get a Russian drone in my car. And that is a reality here in Kherson, another Ukrainian city in the south of Ukraine. The Russians organized what they call a human safari, deliberately striking civilian cars, ambulances, buses, etc. And that's how they train their pilot teams. They send their trainee pilot teams to south bank of the Dnipro River across Kherson. It's about like 6 kilometers from Kherson, and Kherson is a city which lays exactly on the northern bank of the Dnipro. And these pilot teams just train by murdering civilians, and it happens every day. It happens every day. Partly, the city of Kherson has streets covered with nets, and it's all over Ukraine. We have border. We have been once again 3 weeks ago in the city of Novodonetsk in Donetsk Oblast, a town of Donetsk in Donetsk Oblast, where streets are covered with anti-drone nets to increase a bit protection against drones. But that's what the Russians doing. They one German soldier. It's pretty funny, like how German soldiers still believe, not everyone, but some of them, that the Russians follow the rules of war. And they asked me, yeah, but when Russians hit the ambulance, don't they see the Red Cross on the ambulance? I said, of course they see, but it's illegal, the German soldier said. So, yes, of course it's illegal. And that's what makes these targets so interesting for the Russians, because they know that they harm medical supply uh, dramatically by these hits, that they kill the medics, that many Ukrainian soldiers and civilians will die because they kick off the medics. And that is what the Russians do. The best way to get a Russian drone in your car is to paint the Red Cross over your car. Then believe me, you increase the chances of being hit by a Russian drone by 300, 400% immediately. And that is what happens. It is a war which Russia leads without any recognition of any law, where they are proud of breaking the law, where they think that that makes them so incredibly strong and invincible and victorious. And that is the enemy which Ukraine is facing right now.
Sure. So, guys, I'm gonna put in our chat here the link for the new fundraiser. Speaking of which, I don't know how to tag that, but it's there. I have no idea how to pin that, but there's
Yeah, here,
there.
pin message.
What do you know? I know I can do that. So there we go. I just learned something new. So that's pinned. That is the new fundraiser. There was a lot of people that I've spoken with recently, soldiers, who were saying that there's a lot of needs that they had, a lot of immediate needs. Now, as you know, I've been pretty solely focused on just helping with the drones, because that is desperately needed by all the units in Ukraine. Everybody needs more drones all the time, and it does save lives. But there's a lot of other immediate needs that people have, including things like generators, medical supplies, warm clothing for the winter. And so I kept getting more and more of these requests, and realized it's probably a wise idea to expand whom we're helping, how we're trying to help. And speaking with people, speaking just in a poll that I just did on the channels page the other day, 92% of people responded that we should expand and try to help in other capacities as well. And Sergey and I talked about that at length today in the car. And it's something that we are starting now. So I've just pinned there in the comment the fundraiser that we've just launched today to now find new ways to to support Ukraine and its soldiers during this critical period. So let's think. There's some of the questions that we've gotten over this, so we can start to answer those questions. You know the answer to that?
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So before the full scale invasion, the population was approximately like 1.4, 1.5 million of Kharkiv. Yeah. The population of Kharkiv. Yeah, that was the question. How large is the population of Kharkiv now? So it was like 1.4, 1.5 million, and Kharkiv was second largest Ukrainian city and one of economic centers. And now it's hard to estimate because civilians go, militaries come. But I would say from the pre-war population of Kharkiv, about 50% has remained, at least maybe 60%. And some people came from the neighboring towns, especially from those which are in Kharkiv Oblast, Kharkiv region, but closer to the fighting areas of Vovchansk, for example, and of course military personnel camps. So I would say now it's about like 1 million, 1.2 million. You can, when you drive through the city, you clearly see many houses stay without glass in the windows. The windows are covered with wooden shields, and there is no lights inside. But it's surprisingly to understand that people still live inside. And the same is true for the administrative building, for the governmental buildings. For example, we were driving today along of the city hall, and it stays since early 2022 without any window intact, but it's still operating. And that is how it works. So I think, yes, 1.2 million would be maybe 1 million, 1.2 million would be a legitimate guess. Mhm.
So another question is what's going to come next with the peace talks. So as I said, I think that it's very clear that there's not going to be a conclusion to this war in the immediate future because Russia doesn't have an interest in doing that. It doesn't benefit them. And if they do agree to something tomorrow, just as hypothetical, okay, there'll be a temporary peace for a few weeks or a couple months probably in order that they can readjust and then reinvade. Now, of course, the way they would most likely do that, because I'm sure that's a question as well, even if there's security guarantees, how would they do that? Well, they would probably wait for a few different things to happen. They'd wait for the Ukrainian military to shrink in size, which it would immediately, because Ukraine, after the war, will have simply not the budget necessary to maintain a massive military. So within just a few weeks, the population of the military would quickly decrease. So Ukraine at that point would be even more outnumbered. But also the Western support the day after this war comes to conclusion would totally collapse because what's the point? There's now peace. But if that were to happen, that means that Ukraine then, a few weeks later, a few months later, could be attacked again. And then when it gets attacked again, Russia would believe that it would have a better chance of being able to take large swaths of territory all at once. But the other part that's sort of interesting about that, though, is that when you think about how Russia operates as a whole, the mockery that they make of the international relations, of the fact that we perceive them as entering things seriously, but they view it as foolish that we trust them. Would they view it as foolish that you would trust someone who's obviously not to be trusted? And it comes from actually earlier today, Sergey had a brilliant point, which I never thought of before, which is if you look at a lot of the interactions they have and the way that they behave, it really does come from Soviet prison culture. And the more I'm not an expert on Soviet prison culture, but I have read quite a bit about it. And you look at the way that they view power, the way they look at the rights that they have, or the use of the law, it does really have a lot of parallels of to who is right is the stronger guy, the bigger guy. What gives him the right to do something to someone else is because I'm bigger, so I have the right to do so. And within the laws or the rules of the criminals and the convicts, that might make sense. But in a civilized society, that's not the way that people would operate. But for the Russians, that is pretty much the way the senior government works. So they don't view it as wrong to, lie to one another or to trick or to betray, because that's sometimes necessary as a criminal entity in order to get ahead. Again, they're not trying to figure out a way that they can develop peace or develop a better Russia or a better future for their country. They're only interested in what will get them ahead personally. And if you're already engaged, like Vladimir Putin, you've been a dictator for 25 years, you've stolen incredible billions upon billions of dollars from your own population, you've killed a multitude of people in your own country and in foreign countries. why would he possibly be offended morally about lying or about signing a peace deal that he's not going to take seriously or not honor? Of course he's going to do that. I mean, why would he not do that? What in his history shows you that he would not do that? So if the guy is a criminal, is a delinquent, is a murderer, is a robber, is somebody who has committed crimes across the country, across the world, sorry, not just in his own country, that seems very reasonable that he would not take these peace talks seriously, that he will not honor his commitments. And that's why Ukraine is entering this with a great deal of suspicion and a great deal of fear of what will happen next. Sergey, what do you say?
Yeah, that is absolutely, you're absolutely correct, Jason. I think that's exactly what is happening, and we have also discussed today that for the Kremlin, for Vladimir Putin, it's extremely important to create like to camouflage their actions as if they are legal. So they don't just grab the land; they are obsessed with the idea to organize a referendum. He doesn't change the constitution per decree. He organizes polls of the population. He doesn't say I am an infinite dictator. He says, "Oh, I have like retired for 8 years as a prime minister, like prime minister, and then I return, and my first terms don't count." So why do they do this? Because everyone understands it's bullshit, but they still stick to making these things look correct, although everyone knows they're not correct. And that's exactly this prison culture. Everyone knows you take what you take because you're a strong guy, but you want it to add insult to injury. You want that your opponent accepts that you had a right to do it. So you practically ask him, is it okay that I have beaten you? Tell me, is it according to the law? Say yes, yes, okay, you see. And that is exactly what they do. But I saw a very interesting question here. How do people go and make groceries when there are drones flying around? It's a great question, because in the West, many people ask, like, how does daily life look during the war? And life in Ukraine gives a lot of impressions of how it looks like. You can go to like a restaurant or to a cafe or to a bar or to McDonald's and drive a taxi, Uber, Bolt, etc. Work here. You can rent a car and go to the front line, which I did pretty often, like just renting a car in a rental company at budget and bringing drones to the front line. And they just ask, okay, like don't go too close to the front line because your insurance will not cover it probably. I say, yeah, I will take care. Okay, and if you go like closer to the front line, you see like crazy. Oh, are we online? Yeah, we see like a crazy mixture of like cafes and restaurants and bars and houses which do not exist anymore. As I went to Pokrovsk like many times in 23, 24, there was like the situation when you stay in front of a multi-story house, and some entrances of this house don't exist anymore because the Russian missile hit the house. Like just half of the house stays, and it still functions. Like people live there. And in the first floor, the ground floor, there is a cafe, and you can go there and you buy. Oops, is it muted? No. Yeah, and you buy like your coffee, and you buy your cappuccino with cocos milk or banana milk or soya milk, etc. And then you stay in front of this half destroyed house and buy like your americano or your soya milk coffee latte, and you ask yourself, is it insane or not? Because like next moment a missile can fly, and you think it is exactly the anchor of reality for people. They don't want to leave this house because they have memories, because maybe they have an injured grandma who cannot be moved, or maybe they have a work here, maybe they work in a hospital or in a city hall, and they don't want to leave their city. And they continue to live there, and they want to have this cafe with this americano, with this latte coffee, is the only link for them with the reality. So coming back to a question of drones flying around, yes, of course they fly, and people know it. And exactly as Jason and me are sitting here in the hotel, knowing that there is an air alert over there and the missile can hit this building, but we say, okay, if we hide, it makes no sense because we'll hide all our life.
exactly like that, people who live in these cities, they say, okay, I cannot hide in my house all the time. I will go to the next shop, and maybe I will make like some smart moves. Maybe I will not go on daily light. Maybe I will use like a different street. Maybe I will go under the trees. Maybe I will ride my bicycle pretty fast, etc. And drones don't fly all the day, all like every hour. Maybe I will be spared. Like I'm just an old guy. They will not. Yeah. So that's how it functions. Of course, every time some people get killed, but people still live there and they find ways how to cope with this inhumane reality. Yeah.
No, go.
Yeah. But it's also
People are asking.
yeah.
One of the questions I was trying to point out to him is that people are asking him, is the Russian economy, what's the current state of it? Can Russia keep fighting? And it's something Sergey and I also spent hours talking about today in the car. So go ahead, Sergey.
Yeah, that is exactly that is a $1 million question, 1 million ruble question. Russians can just not stop fighting. They have invested all their money in this war, all their money. If they stop, they will lose the war and they will be already in a situation when they have ruined the economy because it cannot function in a peaceful way. So now they remind me a gambler who is in the casino already like spent half of his life insurance, and he thinks, okay, I may go back and be broke, or maybe uh, I put on stake another half of my life insurance and will win, and that is an opportunity for me. I think that is exactly what Vladimir Putin thinking about. Or I'm like before this great war started, I was a passionate skier, alpine ski, and since that time I haven't done any alpine ski anymore. But as an alpine skier, you know, there is a moment when you have decided to ride down a slope which is too hard for you, too complicated for you, and you understand the very first like yards, you understand it was a mistake. But once you go down, there is no way back. You cannot stop because you're not skilled for that. You cannot climb back. You can only go further down in a hope that you will be lucky and you will master it. And that's what Vladimir Putin is doing. He thinks he cannot stop. He just goes down and he borrows money from his central bank, and he gives the central bank borrowing money, practically creation of new money mass, to the private banks, and forces private banks to finance his war factories with this money, which has just been created by the central bank, which is not an independent institution in Russia. And then, like he creates the new schemes how to create money with no value. That's why the Russian top economist German Gref, who is 100% Putin loyal, said that Russian ruble must be valued now by 100 US dollar must be valued now by 120 Russian rubles, not by like 90 like it is now, because it's ruining the economy because Russia cannot export anything. And he says like at least 120. And interesting is that a couple of months ago he said 100, and a couple of months before he said like 80. That means that the amount of rubles without any value in Russian economy is growing. That's why he's increasing the stake, because he knows Russian ruble doesn't value anything. It's artificial value it has because of the tricks of the central bank. And I think that we will see a lot of interesting things in Russian economy as Ukrainian long-range drones continue to strike Russian oil refineries, Russian gas infrastructure, Russian railroad infrastructure, and Russian railroads is already in debt of 4 billion ruble, and Russia cannot, like Russian railways, cannot repay it. So Russian state bails out Russian railways, and a lot of problems are increasing. A lot of Russian regions have already stopped to pay compensation money for the families of fallen Russian soldiers. They say there is no money anymore. Some Russian regions have dramatically reduced bonus payments for those who voluntarily join the Russian army. It's not because they have too much soldiers who join the army. It's because they don't have money to pay them. And there are a lot of other dirty tricks which they use to stay afloat. But I think they cannot do it for longer. And that's why they push this topic with the negotiations, because they know they cannot win the war by military means. That's why they need to push it by diplomatic means or by blackmailing or by psyops. Because if you're strong enough and if you're Russian, you just take what you can take. You don't ask for that.
I agree, Sergey. I was gonna say, is there, we're getting towards the very end of this, only a couple minutes left, so try to get through quickly just some of the other questions. And there's been lots that I see going by as quickly as I can read, which is not so quickly at this distance, but I'm trying. So one of the questions that was asked though above was, I'm trying to find it. Sorry, now I can't find it. But there was one of the questions was related to the fact of what are the Ukrainian people saying about the current situation this winter? What's it looking like? So yeah, there's a lot of significant problems in the country, as you know. There's been a lot of drone strikes, a lot of missile attacks recently. They're taking out the energy throughout the country, and especially in places like Kiev, where I live. These attacks have been really significant. Just a couple of days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, was a very large attack on Kiev that went on for probably 8 or 9 hours, just explosion after explosion, just incredible amounts of air defense going off, as well as machine guns trying to shoot down the drones. And you just hear this sort of, you've probably heard the sound of drones before, or the ones that they have here. You've probably seen in videos at least, but it's this sort of terrible whining motorized noise that just goes on and on. And you can just hear it for hours and hours. And then you can hear the Ukrainians trying to shoot it down. And then you'll hear obviously the air defense going off and trying to take it out. And you'll find out later if it worked or not, depending on if you hear an explosion in the air or if you hear that the Russian missile struck its target and something blows up. So it is, it's not pleasant, and it's definitely going to get worse. It's not going to get better in the near term. And Russia right now thinks it's the best moment to start doing more and more attacks. So I think we should expect that. So what's that mean for the end of the war? I think that realistically, we should not expect it to end soon. It's going to continue. And that's why the Ukrainian soldiers need this assistance right now, because this war is not going to be slowing down at all. Vladimir Putin is very intent on continuing this war and executing it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't know much about Russia who are in very important foreign policy decisions globally, not just the United States, but globally, who I think are giving the Russians far too much lenience if they understood that the Russians are so intent on destroying the West, not just Ukraine. Ukraine's part of a much bigger picture. As I've said many times before, in the eyes of Putin, everything that goes on in Ukraine is just one battle in a global war that he's fighting. There's the fact that Russia today is fighting a global war, and it's allied with countries like Iran and North Korea, which we see it helping it here in Ukraine, the Chinese, which are helping here in Ukraine, but it's also working internationally with these global terrorist organizations, including Hezbollah, including drug cartels, because they're diametrically opposed to Western interests, and they think it is correct this path that they're going down. This path will allow them to further enrich themselves, to enrich their families, while at the same time making their own populations far poorer. But again, the objective here is they are interested in doing what's best for them, not what is best for peace, not what's best for Russia. It is simply what is best for themselves. But as you all know, I work for many years with people who study Russia and work against the Putin regime. And I think one of the things that we've all noticed recently is that the Putin regime is becoming ever more people that are related to him in senior positions. That was not historically the way it worked. Now there's 26 different people that are relatives of his in very senior levels of the government. And it's a huge shift. But why is that? Well, he's making sure they can take as much money of that country as fast as they can. They're doing as much as they can to enrich themselves as fast as they can. And so why would they want this war to stop if there's still an opportunity to make yet even more money? But Sergey and I are both very optimistic that in the immediate near term, and actually an economist I just interviewed for Kiev Post, you can find on their website, Dr. Lugovsky, he studies the Russian economy, and his conclusion was that Russia in the very near term, like second week of January near term, could have a total economic collapse. And that's very realistic because consider this. Right now, Russia is a country that just lost 40% of their national budget. That is the money that comes from oil, the money that comes from gas. They just lost it. India and China are going away. If they lose that, they have no means to make it up. The arms industry used to be one of the largest things for their economy, about $18 billion a year. The national budget's about $485 billion a year. That's gone. Nobody's buying Russian arms anymore. Russia's got a lot of economic problems, and this pressure is coming to a head. If they're going to devalue the currency, it's currently about 80 to the dollar, let's say. It looks like they're going to devalue it to about 100, then about to 110 or 115. Just imagine that. Can you imagine if all of a sudden before the end of the year you lose 34% of your income, and then it goes on to lose even more thereafter, and you end up losing 45% of your income in the course of only a few weeks. In the course of 6 weeks, you lose something like 45, 50% of your income. And in addition to that, costs have continued to rise across Russia. They're going to have hunger within Russia. This is a really serious problem. But more importantly, they're not going to have the ability, the financial means to pay their soldiers. And that's where I think where this war will come to a head. At that point, that's where we start to see state breakdown. And that has happened many times before historically. This would not be the first time it has happened. If you look at back how it worked out for the Russians in World War One, it was something very similar. So I think that Russian history shows that Russia typically loses wars to smaller countries, as they did to Finland, as they did to the Japanese, as look how hard it was for them to subdue Chechnya, which is a part of Russia, a very small area, but it took them a tremendous amount of force, and only because they just bombed totally their own citizens were they able to take it under full control. But Russia's history is not a history of lots of military victories. It's a lot of military defeats. It's a lot of bad leadership that eventually bankrupts the country and is forced to flee. But everyone who's come and join us, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We've reached exactly what we're going for 45 minutes. We're at 47 minutes. So I appreciate you all for coming and joining us today here in Kharkiv. We appreciate your ongoing support for Ukraine, for the work that we're doing, for the work that Sergey works on. He's the one who specifically works on drones 7 days a week. He works on helping the Ukrainian soldiers in a number of different ways. He's constantly coming out to the front, and I've known him for a number of years. And I appreciate all that you guys are doing for Ukraine.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for your constant help, and it helps a lot. It means a lot for the soldiers on the front. They look happy like kids when they get the drones, when they get all the equipment, cores, power stations, and when they get this message from you that you stay on Ukraine side, you stand with Ukraine. Despite everything, despite any psychological tricks of the Kremlin, you stay on Ukraine side. And that is the most important message which we can deliver to the front, that these people are not alone, because that's the biggest fear of any soldier, to believe maybe I'm alone, maybe what I do is not necessary. And thank you so much. Thank you, Jason, for what you do.
Thank you all for your continued support for Ukraine. It's greatly appreciated. Have a good one.